Oh yeah, catch you up on a couple of weeks of matches. So after I went to the Tunnel Barn Farm Festival, I was enjoying a bit of commercial fishing. Still not really had a chance to get on anything on a natural venue up until that point because canals weren't very good and the rivers weren't open. So there was a Tunnel Barn match this qualifier after the festival, which I thought had to be worth going to. Drew an interesting peg, top 3. I couldn't quite decide what I was going to do if I was to be honest. I had a bit of a reed bed that stuck out to the right and it was quite shallow. It was about 20 inches deep, I would say. It's a little bit of a tricky one, that, because at Tunnel Barn there's so many fish that you need to fish shallow in shallow water, like 10 inches, 12 inches. And when you've got a depth like 20 inches, it's almost like it's not deep enough for them to feed shallow. But if you fish on the bottom, you still experience problems with foul hookers. So I was a little bit disappointed, as strange as it may seem. If it had been 3 foot deep there, I think I would have caught shallow against those reeds. But it was a hard, gravelly bottom. I should think it's fantastic in the sort of spring when the fish are looking for that sort of little bit of extra depth. And then it was relatively narrow to the island in front of me, but I still thought I might catch an odd fish shallow. And then I've obviously, of course, had the island, which was a tricky shit because the bank was a little bit awkward behind me with some overhanging trees. And I knew if I was going to catch there, I was never going to catch a massive weight if I fished there. Maybe if you needed, say, 120 pounds to win the match, it would have been a good place to fish. But I felt that you'd need a bigger weight. I went with casters as my chosen feed. It's obviously a tricky one what to go with. Pellets, casters, maggots. And recently this sort of sloppy ground bait, worm slop type approach has been working really well. Basically, so you know what it is, chopping up worms quite fine, alright, and then mixing some worms and a few casters in with the fine peat that you get in with the worms. Now some people add a little bit of ground bait to that, some people just use the peat on its own, and they basically wet it up so when it's in you can hold it into just a ball and throw it to about 7 metres, probably 8 metres maximum. Any further than that and you'll find it would break up. So that's the sort of consistency you're looking at. Now it's not something that I've really done that much of. I've always preferred loose feed. That's how I've gone about it. But I have had my eyes opened in recent weeks to the fact that when you're on a lot of fish, the sloppy ground bait could work quite well. I wasn't sure how many fish we were going to be on here at Tunnel, so I thought, no, I'll go with the loose fed casters. Anyway, I've started down the edge because although I hadn't seen any movement by these reeds, about 10 minutes before the start of the match I saw quite a bit of movement. So I thought, well, it's got to be worth starting there. Just fed a few casters, nothing massive, and just went straight in. And I had a nice little run fishing on the bottom for about 30 minutes. Decent F1s. The first fish I hooked, I wasn't sure what would happen with the reeds, but the first fish I hooked it and it must have been having a run up because as I've hooked it, it was in the reeds. So I was stuck and I lost my entire rig, first drop in of the day, and I thought, well, that's not a very good start. Quickly got another rig out on some a lot stronger elastic, and even though they were small fish, the trouble is, even with small fish, when you hook them so close to reeds, if they're facing the reeds, their first tail movement is straight into the reeds. So you've got to have the strong gear to guide them the other way. And I was on it from then on, didn't lose too many at all after that. Had an odd one go in the reeds, but not too many. Caught there for a little while, but of course because it's close and it was shallow, it started to go a bit funny, odd foul hooked fish and maybe not feeding as confidently as I wanted them to. And then I've gone on the shallow line and I caught a few fish there, but it was very flat where I was. The island was sheltering it from any sort of ripple and I just couldn't get them feeding there with any confidence. I sort of flitted between the two, but it was waning, and on my left and right they were catching a few fish but nothing spectacular. So I thought, right, I'll just go across to the island, play it safe for the last bit because I'm not catching well enough on these lines to catch a big weight. Let's just hope it's a lower weight day and just see what I can catch. And I've gone across to the island and I've fished with pellets, little pot, little pellet on the hook, nice short rig, pushed right into the bank, and I've come back with a fish pretty much every chuck in till the end of the match. Enjoyed the fishing, never felt I was going to catch a massive weight, which was a bit of a disappointment to be honest, because I was hoping there might be a chance. I've weighed 127 pound I believe, which won my section, which I was quite happy about. And then on the other side of the lake, Andy Bennett won that side with 183 pound, and it was really interesting talking to Andy. I can't stress how good an angler he is. He is a fantastic angler, and he's fished with this worm slop. And 2 or 3 weights on the other side of the lake had 250 pounds. They've both been caught on that slop as well. So I think you've got to have your eyes open. It was something that I'd almost ruled out, and I think that was a little bit naive on my part. So something I'm going to look at, just see when and where it's going to be as effective. I feel that I would have probably caught a few fish on that. They might have fed a little bit more confidently in the reeds with a bit of a cloud in the water. They might have fed a little bit more confidently out in front of me with a little bit of a cloud in the water. I don't think the peg was worth 180, 190 pound, which is what you needed to win the match. But I certainly could have caught a little bit more, which is what you should always try and assess, even if you do win your section or whatever you do. So, quite an interesting day that. To say it fished well is an understatement. There was well over 20 weights over 100 pound. Probably more like 30 odd weights over 100 pound, which is incredible. The match was won by Lee Harrison, good friend of mine. He won it by 10 ounces from Jamie Hughes, who's another fantastic angler. Lee Harrison's fished with worms in the peat, who I consider to be one of the best at doing that. He tends to do it with a cut more than throwing it. And then of course Jamie Hughes was second and Andy Bennett was third, which I like to mention those 3 on this occasion because it's a time when I felt that they are, certainly Jamie and Andy are 2 of the best F1 anglers in the country. They're brilliant at everything to be honest, but they're very, very good at F1 fishing, and I think that showed. I think they've made the most of their pegs that they've drawn to put themselves in a position to potentially win in the match. So I felt that was worth a mention. Definitely well done lads, and well done to Lee. I'm well happy that he's in the final. I'm sure Jamie will get there. He's had a couple of close calls, but I've no doubt that he'll be in the final. A few rounds to go. Yeah, that sort of led me on to what I was hoping is the end of my commercial stint for a few months. I mean, I like to do it in the spring, and then once things settle down a bit on natural venues, I like to go on to more natural venues. I've got the World Club Championships coming up, and then there's a lot of big events on certain rivers and canals over the next few weeks. So I went and had a little look at the Stainforth and Keeby because there was a big practice match on for the Winter League final. Thought it's definitely worth going and having a fish with so many people there. You know, 100 anglers booked on was going to be good. I've drawn a peg down towards Stanleylands Marina. It's a really good area, that sort of area around there. 10-15 pegs. You've got to try and find out where the fish are on the day and hopefully make the most of them. There was an odd bream caught, and luckily I've caught a few. I've done a few things a little bit different. I've just taken it a bit steady with the bait. I haven't ploughed any bait in at the start. I knew that the fish lived in that area. I just wanted to see if they were in front of me. So I've fed like small, soft balls of ground bait with some worms and casters, not too dissimilar to what I've been talking about for the commercials. And I caught fish in pieces of worms. I fed them regularly with a little kinder pot as well, just to sort of keep a constant cloud going through. And I flicked an odd caster. The water's really clear, and I just felt a little trickle of bait all the time would hopefully just home them in and hold them into my area. I mean, no doubt I've obviously been in a good area, but it's worked. I've had 30 pound of skimmers. I've had 16 big skimmers, which is a great weight for a canal. And that was second in the match. Mark Addy had a fantastic 43 pound from the top end. I think he was on the end peg, but you know, whatever, he's done brilliant. So you know, 43 pound on a canal. I can't ever remember such a big weight being caught on the Staney, so great result for him. And I was happy to come second in such a big match. Nice to get on a natural venue again. It did seem all the fish were covered in barnacles and what have you. So if you are watching this before the Winter League final this weekend, my advice to you is don't get carried away. It's not going to be brilliant. I think that the fish haven't really spawned properly. The canal does respond really well to warm weather, and this week is forecast for a bit of a heat wave. I've got a funny feeling it might trigger the fish into having a chew, because in the past few years, if we've had any sustained period of warmth, like a week of warm weather, the match towards the end of the week has been brilliant. Like when the water warms up, it really does. The natural venues, the bigger canals around Yorkshire, really do respond well. So although I wouldn't be going all guns blazing, I'd certainly be ready for a slightly better match than it's been this weekend. Possibly not as big a individual bream weights, but the fish possibly more spread out, more smaller fish I would have thought to catch. So best of luck to all the teams competing. We're in the runners-up final at Lindome on Saturday because the Winter League didn't work out, which I spoke to you about earlier in the year. So we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know how that goes and catch up with you then. Thanks, bye.